Book Buzz, HarperCollins Book Buzz. Check it out. Do-do-do, do-do-do. Book Buzz, HarperCollins Book Buzz. Brought to you by Library Love Fest.
Hello. Hi, Lainey.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Hi, Essie.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, everyone. How are you? It's the Library Love Fest team coming to you from various ports in the storm. Welcome back to another episode of Galley Chat. This is a book club for librarians where we celebrate a book before it's a book. It's in galley form, just the way you like it. So this month, we've been talking about and to folks who have been instrumental in bringing to life, from dream to reality, this very, very unique book by this gifted author we're about to bring on. We're going to bring her on right now. The author is Nikki Erlick. Nikki, can you bring your camera? Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled to have you here to talk about your book, your debut novel, The Measure. I have to say, this book has taken Harper by storm. So many people who have read it have just, because it's the kind of book that anybody can read. The premise is just that. Would you choose to find out the length of your life if you could? There's the premise. The measure is the story, filled with characters and situations that you just can't kind of stop talking about, kind of can't stop thinking about them. And so we thought this is a perfect book for Galley Club, because this is such a discussable story. And we love that you have written it, and we love that you have taken time to come on today to talk to librarians and answer their questions. So librarians, make sure you have questions for Nikki, because what better book club can there be? The one where the author is here to answer your questions. So welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. And thanks for showing the cover. It's so beautiful. I can't stop looking at it. I'm very lucky.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. Before we get started, I do want to mention that today's program on Facebook Live is also available on Crowdcast. So this is something new we're doing to make sure that folks who aren't on Facebook can certainly watch this live and ask questions via Crowdcast. So Nikki, I'm just going to read a quick bio, and then we're going to get into the meat of the book. And again, spoiler alerts abound, because by now you should have done your homework and read the book, because that's what makes it fun. So Nikki, you're a writer and an editor, and your work has appeared in New York Magazine, in Harper's Bazaar, Newsweek, Cosmopolitan, Huffington Post, just to name a few. Your bachelor's degree from Harvard was in comparative literature, and a master's degree from Columbia University in global thought. Whoa, well, you're the perfect person to write The Measure. And so I turn to you now to tell folks, give them a snapshot of what you want them to know about this book for the handful of people who have not yet read it.
Sure. So this book, I guess kind of the way to talk about it is where the premise came from, because it didn't, just appear in like one light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I have the whole story. Here's the measure. And it was really this kind of process of inspiration. And it started really with Greek mythology, which I think is interesting, because that wasn't like my area of focus or anything that I studied on. But I've always been someone just drawn to big questions, questions like, how much power do we have over our fate, and how much control do we have in our lives, and found myself wondering if I could tackle these questions in a story, because I'm someone who's always turned to books to help me make sense of the world and to help me navigate kind of big questions like this. And so when I was thinking about fate, I found myself kind of remembering the Greek vision of fate, and the fact that they believed in these three women, the three fates, who would spin these strings of life on their spindle and measure out the amount of time that each of us would have on Earth. And I just found myself wondering what would happen if we mere mortals could see our strings, and if we were given access to this knowledge that previously only the fates had access to. And so that's where kind of the concept came from of giving people their strings. But I didn't want to just have people like open the palm of their hand and receive their string. I thought it would be a more interesting conflict if people could choose whether or not they would look at their string, and that the tension in the novel would come not only from the sudden arrival of these strings, but also from the fact that it was an individual decision that each person had to come to as to whether or not they would look at their string. And so then, in order to get that kind of side of the premise, I was thinking, like, who could possibly resist this curiosity? Who could resist the temptation to look? And of course, that reminded me of a different Greek myth of Pandora's box and this question of curiosity and looking or not looking. And so I thought maybe there was a way to marry these two inspirations and to have the strings arrive in a box for each person. So for anyone who hasn't read the book, that's what happens. Everyone wakes up and they receive a box. And at first they're not sure what they mean, but the box says the measure of your life lies within. And ultimately we realize that there is a string inside, and each person's string does equate with the measure of their life. And it's up to you to decide if you want to look or not look. And the rest of the book really took on a life of its own from there, but that was the origin.
Fantastic. And we can talk. I'd love to talk about or have you talk about the characters, because there's a great range of folks that you center on, and there's diversity, and there are complex. It's not just. It doesn't. At first glance, it seems like it's such an obvious, easy, straightforward. Yes or no. I want to know. I don't want to know. But there's so much. This is such a layered thing. And so I don't want to take up all the time. And I know Essie and Lainey have questions, and librarians are commenting and logging on. But can you just talk a little bit about where these characters, how they came to you, and without going too much into the read, because the read is the fun. But can you just talk about them a little bit? Or maybe even some of your favorites.
Well, I don't know if I could pick a favorite, but sort of interestingly enough, for a book that now has a pretty wide cast of characters, I initially conceived of the novel with far fewer characters and saw it mostly as a love story between a person with a long string and a person with a short string, and the challenges that their relationship would have to face in this new world. But the more that I just kind of sat in the world and spent time with this question, the more I just couldn't turn off my brain, and I couldn't stop thinking about other types of people and wondering, how might a doctor respond to this world when they have to save lives? And how might a soldier respond when they are choosing a potentially dangerous path? And how might a politician even take advantage of this life-altering shift? And so these questions, I just felt compelled to kind of explore each one with their own characters, and so that's where the rest of the cast really grew out of. And I mean, there are a million possible stories that you could have told in this world, and so I did have to stop asking those questions eventually and kind of stick with my group. But I knew that I wanted to keep that love story at the heart of the book. That was always the origin. And I also knew from the very beginning that I would put two sisters in the heart of the story, based on my relationship with my own sister. And after I had kind of the 8 or so main characters that are in the book now, it was important for me to find ways to kind of intertwine all of their lives. And that became kind of a task of mine as well, because I was writing a lot of this book during a time of quarantine and isolation and social distancing. And I think a lot of us felt like we were missing this sense of human connection and interconnectedness. And so I wanted to kind of recapture that in this story. And I was also writing in an apartment in New York City where I could look out my window and see directly into the apartment of my neighbor. Like if I, I had like a super voyeuristic view right into their life. And I could just watch them kind of go about their day and like cook dinner and watch TV. And I felt like I had this connection to them without ever meeting in person and without really knowing anything about their lives, what they were going through, their sort of inner struggles. And so I wanted to write a book in which I had all these strangers whose lives did kind of overlap in ways both, just tangentially brushing against each other or more significantly overlapping. And I found that really comforting in a time when people were, when we were really lonely and isolated, and to feel like we all are actually so interconnected, often kind of in ways we don't even know.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And I know people in the chat are saying like, mask or isolation or, all these topics. And I was telling you before, I feel like I could have changed one or two words, and this like speculative fiction seemed very much like anything I could read on the news. There's discrimination. There's, this army policy of like, you have to tell them, or mass politics. So when you were writing this, did that kind of just naturally come into your writing, or because you were surrounded by that, or did you kind of make a concerted effort to put that in?
Yeah, I think it came in pretty naturally, because I think a lot of people, their immediate reaction is like, was this an allegory for the pandemic? And obviously, as I mentioned, the inspiration had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was that was like 2019 that those thoughts were in my head, and before I could ever have anticipated that this would have happened. And so really the foundation of the book, the premise, the characters, all of that was set up before the pandemic. And then a lot of the scenes in the first sort of third of the book were written, and it was really the latter half of the book that was then shaped by everything going on. I think it was hard not to sort of experience those first few months and feel like everything was just framed in terms of this like us versus them mindset, that it was like you were, COVID was real or COVID was a hoax. You were pro lockdown, you were anti lockdown, you were pro mask, you were anti mask. Everything was just this, there are only two sides and you're on one side or the other. And so the long stringer versus short stringer conflict kind of grew out of that sense of division everywhere. But also then there were times of great, beauty during those months as well, and coming together. And there were teachers and healthcare workers and frontline workers putting their lives on the line for everybody else. And there were people I remember seeing videos of people standing on their balconies and singing or playing instruments so that people could open their windows and listen, and just have this kind of moment of communal joy. And so I wanted both the pulling apart and the coming together of society to be reflected in this story. And so that's where a lot of the sort of tension and both of those forces in the latter half of the book kind of were inspired by. And I felt like I didn't want to write a pandemic novel, but I felt like I was writing about this life-altering shift in society. And so the way that it would feel the most authentic as speculative fiction would be if it mirrored how society was actually reacting to a life-altering shift in that moment. And so hopefully it feels like a more kind of realistic portrayal of society because it was in fact inspired by things that were happening. But it wasn't a specific allegory for these times, but it was certainly shaped by them. And certainly for me, being able to write during this time was so cathartic. And I, like many people, I got laid off from my job in March 2020, and so it's a very frightening and destabilizing time for me. And so having this novel to work on was really a saving grace and made me feel less anxious.
Wow, that whole thing was just really beautiful. You are my favorite kind of writer because you play with the concept of Sonder so well. You just take in just the idea that everyone's life is so different and complex and as vivid as your own, and you made it so beautiful. which is I wanted to ask my world building question, because it's just you really did. You took in everything, all these details. I mean, you left no questions unasked, no stones unturned. And I just, even from our interview last week, they did say it went all the way into final edits. And so I just wanted to ask about you about that, because it's so interesting to me. You made this world so real.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I've heard a couple of things that about speculative fiction, that if you're going to kind of bring something fantastical into your writing, that the rest of the world needs to feel very real in order for people to buy into that one kind of fantastical element. And so I really wanted to make sure that everything else felt very grounded in reality. And to that end, I really tried to, as I mentioned, sort of the short stringers aren't a direct allegory for any one group of people, but I really tried to craft the experience of the short stringers by drawing on the way we've treated historically marginalized communities, throughout history, and many different communities. Lainey mentioned the sort of the military aspect, the kind of short stringers being banned from serving openly in the military was obviously drawing on the history of the LGBTQ plus community within the military. The kind of profiling of short stringers as potentially being dangerous or even potential terrorists certainly draws on the mistreatment of the Muslim American community, among other communities. And so I really tried to pull aspects from history. And it's quite unfortunate that the book feels so relevant, because it's now being published in a moment when hate crimes against Asian Americans are rising and anti-Semitism is rising, and we still have this world in which we always view people who are different from us as the other, and we view them with fear and with sometimes animosity, if not just indifference. And so I felt like that was really, unfortunately, the most realistic portrayal of how society would react to this scenario. But in terms of then kind of the little nitty gritty things, those were more just, they kept like popping in a time where I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if somebody applied to a bank loan and like they had a short string, like would that affect them? And like what, certainly healthcare was a big one that I thought, how would, if somebody showed up to a hospital knowing they had a short string, would that affect the way they were being treated? And luckily I had a very good team of editors at HarperCollins, and we were thinking about those things down to the very end. And I think one of those scenes was like, well, would there be a triage nurse screening them before they came in? Things like that, where it had to sound super, we wanted it to be super reflective of the way that the healthcare system actually works. And so it was really just both the kind of broader theme of sort of the othering of the short stringers, which I hope was reflective of the real world, and then these kind of smaller details that hopefully come together to make it feel like an authentic portrayal.
We, that's, talk about it. So you're including the world, and world is everyone. There's, so we have questions and comments that we're gonna, we'll be weaving in and out with questions of our own, but this is the time for librarians to, so much excitement about the book here. And Lainey and Essie and I will be kind of looking at these, but did want to mention again the audiobook, because there's a lot of fans of the audiobook. So Karen Troutman said, I love this book on audiobook. Julia Whelan did a fantastic job. Pam Garda was saying, I'm listening to the audiobook now and I'm loving it. It's really fun to introduce audiobooks to some readers who are sort of like you either like audiobooks or you don't. And then sometimes all it takes is the introduction of, the narrator, or just to listen to a speck of it, and suddenly you're swept away. And that's happening to so many people who listened to the clip that we played. We had Julia Whelan on, and I don't know if you wanted to speak to that a little bit, or Lainey or Essie, because we were all on that conversation together. And there is that, what's our little secret that maybe we'll see if somebody was listening that can tell us the trick of the trade for audio narrators.
Yes, I'm so lucky that Julia said yes to do the narration. She's obviously a superstar and phenomenal. And I was watching her interview, and so I do know the trick of the trade. And I messed up, and I was going to do it in advance of this Zoom call, and I forgot to add it to my grocery list. That's the hint.
Now let's see. Everybody put in the comments what our secret that Julia Whalen gave us for recording audiobooks. We'll see. We won't say anything right now. There's so many great comments. Like Kim McGee said, I have been thinking about this book for weeks. I just relate. Somebody said they relate to Amy in the book. I love and hate that you never find out where the boxes come from, someone said. So that's a good book club question. And yeah, a lot of people saying it, just all of the topics seemed very, very relevant. And they just loved all the characters. Those are a few comments. I don't know. I'm sure there's more questions, but I want to read a few comments.
Oh yeah, no, those are a few comments. A lot of people just really, really love what you were able to do. Casey Davis said, I applaud you making the unbelievable believable.
Thank you.
Paige said, I really appreciated the connections between all the characters, beautifully written, loved it. And yeah, I think this could go on, so we should probably start just asking questions.
Oh, we got a couple green apples, so there we go.
Congratulations.
They were listening. I feel like a teacher, like, put on your listening ears. What did we talk about?
I know. I'm very bummed that I forgot that I wanted to eat it right beforehand.
You sound great.
Thank you.
Wow, everyone got it. Good job. That was awesome. Okay, I'll start with a question. Actually, speaking of how we love and hate or the boxes that we never find out where they come from, why did you somebody wants to know, Amy White, why did you choose to do that? Why did you choose to go that way?
Yeah, it's something that I definitely thought about a lot and went back and forth on a lot while I was writing, and ultimately came to the conclusion that there are just some things in this life that we don't get the answers to, you know, and I don't mean that in like a cheeky way. I mean it in like, whether, you know, you see it in a religious or spiritual sense or in a secular sense, that I think we've all felt that there are certain mysteries of the universe, certain things that happen that we don't really understand why they happened. You know, I think we all struggle with why bad things happen to good people, why, you know, some people seem to get all the good luck, some people seem to get all the bad luck, and there are just some things that's part of life that we don't get to know why. And so I think that if the characters were given answers as to where the boxes came from, or, you know, where their power came from, then they would also need to receive the answer of why people's strings were different lengths and what went into determining the length of a string. And as a creative writer, I think it would have been a fun exercise to come up with, you know, these fictional forces that who created the boxes and sent them down to Earth. But I don't think I could have come up with an answer as to why people's strings are different lengths, and it almost would have felt wrong for me to try to answer that. And so I felt content to leave that a mystery.
You need like a whole other book just to go into that.
There were a lot of books that could have come out of this book, but I hopefully everything that's in there still feels very contained.
Nice.
I think
We all had the answers to the whys, right? Don't we all ask why? Like, why is this happening? Why? There isn't, you know, almost isn't an answer. So
yeah,
I think
I'm almost kind of glad that you decided not to, because you're right. It's like, who are we to determine that?
Also, whatever I said, I'm sure some people would be very upset with the answer, and some people some people would have loved it, some people would have hated it. So
Yep.
You can never please everybody.
You win.
Yeah, you're like, I'm staying out of it.
Yep,
No,
yep. I just bring you the story.
Yeah. So Kim McGee asked, I loved how you approached the implications of string length on the characters' lives. Did it take you a long time to figure out all of these issues, or did you have it solved from the beginning?
Oh no, it definitely took a long time. I had pretty much all the characters from the beginning. was pretty lucky, and they all kind of appeared in my head pretty fully formed, each of these characters. And I think I knew from the beginning each character's string length. But then the sort of everything else, the implications of how everything played out, I sort of discovered as I went along. I really did try to outline. I want to be an outliner, but eventually the outline kind of went out the window, and I was just kind of discovering as I was writing.
Nice. That seems to be the theme of a lot of these past 2 years. Everything goes out the window. Yeah.
Just kind of make it up as you go. There is a question from Lily and Dabney too. See, did you strive to inspire a sense of hope with your novel?
I do think so. It was written during a time when I think we needed a lot of hope. And I think I want kind of the takeaways of the novel to be, to vary based on each individual, because I hope that there are different aspects of the story that you can connect to, whether that's more of a romantic storyline or a friendship storyline or a more kind of socio-political commentary. Hopefully they can speak to different people. But I think the main takeaway that I wanted was that there is always hope, because everyone's life has equal impact and equal value and equal purpose, no matter your string length, no matter any of the differences between us, and that no matter how divided we may seem, there is always hope that we will come back together, and that that love can triumph over hatred, that empathy can triumph over fear and over division, and so for all of those reasons, we can hold on to hope that and believe in change.
Now more than ever, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it happened to be that I received the news about this book, which was going to be published during a very hopeful time. It was January 2021, and I had just started volunteering at a local vaccine clinic, and it was like the vaccine rollout. And so it was like this, this time of great hope and gratitude and people feeling like we were really sort of starting a new chapter. And so it was incredible to be working there while I was getting the calls about the book, and to just feel like, it was really the dawn of a new day.
Wow.
That's really beautiful. There's another question here from Nicole Theory Williams that I'm kind of curious about too. Did you relate to a certain character more than the others?
Ooh, I think there was no one character that I felt like, oh, this is, the stand-in for me in the book. And I kind of tried to sprinkle aspects of myself perhaps in different characters. Like I share a lot with Nina, in the sense that we both kind of grew up in like the journalistic world, and I have a background in copy editing, and I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but I think the sort of thought process around the box I relate to the most to Amy. I think that was my kind of thinking in the end, that I don't want to know, and I'm going to leave it closed. And so she kind of has the closest thought process to my own.
Yeah.
We are, we're looking at questions and comments on Crowdcast and Facebook, and Vicky Nesting says, I love the perspective you brought to issues of discrimination. Thank you for this thoughtful and lovely novel.
Thank you.
Casey Davis says, I applaud you making the unbelievable believable. I think somebody read that already. Reminded me of how Stephen King was able to do this in Under the Dome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we kind of talked about it a little, but I told you it would be the question. Would you look at your string? We already have some people asking.
I'm sure. Yeah, I do think that honestly, my answer changed on a day-to-day basis, like based on which scene I was writing at the time. And I remember having a conversation with my family pretty early on when I was like, this is the book I'm writing, this is the premise. And I said, like that I would not look at my string. And my mom's immediate reaction was like, what are you talking about? Of course you would. Like, there's no way that this box could sit in your house and you wouldn't open it. So, despite her disbelief, I do think that at this moment in my life, I would not open it, but I'm very open to the possibility that, perhaps a big life change, like having children or something would prompt me to reconsider. And it's perhaps something that no one can actually answer if you're not actually holding the box.
Yeah, we talked about that last week with like, if you had an illness or something that you kind of knew the time was near, would you still look? Like that, your situation really affects it as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were a few people who agreed with me when I said I would open my box, but I would only open it because I knew that if I didn't, I would lose my mind. So, and I think most of us, like Lainey and V and like Liz and Julie, I think they all said that they probably wouldn't, right, guys? You guys were kind of on the fence about it.
Yeah, I think so. Although I do know myself and I'd probably look. I did have a dream last night, probably because I was thinking about this interview today, and I had a dream that I was told that I wouldn't last. I would live until I was 77. And I said, "Oh, I'm not even going to make 80." And they said, "No."
Oh no.
I know, that's all right. I'm 60, so I get 17 more good years. Ugh. But you know what? It's a dream. And then as somebody said, we plan and God laughs. Who said that? Nicole Terry Williams said, when we plan, God laughs. So true. Kimberly McGee says, I have changed my mind several times.
Mm.
Who knows? All we do know is that it's going to happen to all of us. And, I don't know. It's a big question that has sparked such great conversation. And again, the characters, the situations, the ripple effect, the effect on other people's lives. I mean, it really is such a thought-provoking question, and that you have managed to not figuring out how this happened. How did this physically happen? That every single person around the world got one of these boxes doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's
to me,
just-
the story was always less, how did the boxes get here, and more what do we do with them now, and the
Yeah.
aftermath, really. I actually think for me, the bigger question is less, your individual choice about whether or not you look, and more like, who has the right to know about other people's strings, and like, do you have a right to know about your partner's string, your family member's strings?
Yeah.
Or even in grand scale, like I really
Yeah.
enjoyed those conversations about like, in Korea, you have to, well, I might be mixing these up, but you have to put them in a system, or like China, you just throw them out and don't look at them at all. Like you're not even given the choice. So like, what does that tell about your choice when you're not given the opportunity to make a choice? And so I really liked that too.
Yeah, I really like that whole, I didn't even put that together. The idea that it's not about whether or not you would look, but whether or not you have the right to know what somebody important to you has. And I feel like that's something that you don't even, for me, I wouldn't even think about it, because it's just, of course, I would let somebody who I love know, or I would hope they would let me know. And you're right. That's something that should be considered. There's a really good question here from Jenna Marie, which I think it's Jenna Marie's birthday. So happy birthday. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I think it's your birthday. What made you choose 22 as the age when people got the string?
Yeah. That was also an interesting question that I had while I was writing. I think I thought that if it was coming for children, then it wouldn't be their decision whether or not to look. It would be their parents' decision, because you're too young to make that decision for yourself. And so I felt like there had to be an age at which it was the individual's choice, choosing for themselves, and not somebody else, a guardian choosing for you. And yeah, I feel like 22 seemed like it was, it's the age that you really, you finish school, you go off into the world, you become an adult, and you're on your own. And so, I think some people might say 22 is perhaps even still too young to be able to make that kind of decision for yourself. You're still, growing, your brain is still forming. And so perhaps even if it arrived at 22, you should still wait a little while, until you feel mature enough. But that was kind of the age that I settled on.
Yeah, that would be an interesting choice to like what age to get these. I think we're conditioned to thinking like 18 or 21, but I like 22. So Kimberly McGee wants to know what you're working on next and if you can share anything with us.
I'm playing around with a couple ideas now. And so I'm still kind of waiting to figure out which will be the most fruitful. But I do think that whatever I end up pursuing will be another kind of ensemble story. I really liked kind of being able to tackle the same issue from a variety of different people's perspectives and finding interesting ways for their lives to kind of intersect. And so I think my next story, perhaps not as large of an ensemble as The Measure, but definitely will have that element to it.
Well, we can't wait to see what you do, because this what a debut. I mean, it doesn't feel like a debut, I'll tell you that. And that was another thing that a lot of people said at Harper, like this, very seldom does a debut come along that people are just like, this does not feel like a debut. It's just so multi-layered and so thoughtful. I think, as Lily and Dabney said, so empathetic, and it's a beautiful read. It's just you just go there to the depths of what people are feeling, and it's so thought-provoking. It's a perfect book for book clubs, and so we're so glad to have this under this new program where we're just, librarians wanted to have a book club, and we thought this would be the greatest way to do it, is to get this out there and get interest going. The interest was there already, to be perfectly honest. Many people, when we announced it, they'd said, oh, we already read it, and which is wonderful, but it's this is one that you won't soon forget. Those characters will stay with you long after you've closed the book. It's really wonderful. It's congratulations on this, Nikki. It's just a beautiful read. As there's really no good place to stop. So we were thanking you before we went on. So thank you for writing this book, because it is just so beautiful.
Thank you.
Honestly, if you write more of the, like, even if you just put short stories out for the characters, storylines, and just if you want to add to this world, I'll read it. I know so many more people will read it, because I love it, and your writing is so beautiful and so, it's deep, but it's not, what's the word? Liz explained it perfectly. You're just poetic, but it's not too much, and it's really great.
I appreciated that that the word empathetic was what you used, because really, for me, I think why I've always been a reader all my life is because reading is like an adventure in empathy, and it's it's asking you to pick up a book and read a person's name and feel for them and connect to them, this character who you're just meeting for the first time, and I do love that. I think there are studies that talk about children who read more are more empathetic in real life, and so if my book can contribute a little bit to the sort of proliferation of empathy in the world, then that would be enough for me.
I love that.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
What you just said is perfect. I love that. Reading is an adventure in empathy. That is so beautiful, and that just hits all the notes, as does your.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have any other questions, but I don't want to hop off if we do. So please, guys, jump in if there are any.
I think we pretty much covered everything. Everybody's just reiterating like it's perfect book club pick, and I mean, we didn't even go in. There's so many layers. I don't know how you packed all this into like such a succinct story, because there's like a romance, and there's multiple romances, but like leaving the notes for Ben, and like there's just so much to talk about. We can't put it all in, and so a book club is going to just have so much to discuss, and everybody is in the comments saying like, yes, book club, perfect.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Pam asked, do you love the cover as much as we do, which you did say, but let's just show it again. Why not?
Yes. Yes, the cover is incredible. I honestly don't think I ever would have thought to have the string be represented this way, and it's just a perfect representation.
Yeah, it was cool what they were saying last week. I hope everybody who didn't get to watch last week's behind the scenes, because the question was like, why is the box not on the cover? But I love their reasoning. Did you kind of assume that the box would be on there, or what was your thinking?
Perhaps I did. Interestingly enough, the box is on the UK version of the cover. So if anybody's looking for that cover instead, the box is there. But yeah, I know I fully understood kind of Liz's thinking that we wanted it to feel more kind of just emotionally evocative of the story, as opposed to kind of a literal representation of the book. But I do think that the box on the British cover works really well too. It's very intriguing. But no, I loved the colors on this too. As soon as they showed it to me with the gold and the blue, I was just like, this is it. This is amazing.
Oh, I love the colors. These are so just eye-catching. And also, I really like the way that I don't know if they meant to put it that way, but it's the representation of like holding together, all kind of like it falls apart, but it holds together too. So that does kind of play into one of your themes. So I don't know. Personally, I would choose this one over the box cover. So I'm glad we got this one.
Yeah, and the bouquet of flowers is just such a great symbol, because it's like we carry a bouquet at a wedding at that moment of joy and sort of the start of a new chapter, and we lay a bouquet down at a gravestone and at the end of life. And to me, it's just it's present for all of the big moments in life, and that was really special as well that it was on there.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Lillian Dabney wants to know what you're reading now. I think we all want to know that.
I'm currently about midway through the Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, which is unlike anything I've read before, and a wonderful tribute to the power of libraries. So I'm sure it's a favorite among librarians.
Nice.
I don't know what I'm going to read next. My pile is pretty big. So if anyone has a recommendation.
Such is our plight every day.
I know it's ever growing. I think I have a new shipment coming now from Books of Magic, which is just going to add to it. So it's a lot.
Oh God.
Never ending to be read list. Yeah, everyone's talking about the cover right now. Everyone's saying just how perfect it was. The flower petals show how fragile we are. That's what Kim McGee said, and how flowers have such a visible life cycle. That was what Donna said, and it's very good choice.
So you're I guess a virtual, people are asking when you're going to some stores, or are you going to be doing some more online? Let's be clear right now, folks. If you are doing author programming virtually with your library, please let us know. If you'd like Nikki to come to your library virtually, we can set that up, so let us know. And this is you're about to a couple more months, and you're off and running virtually or in person, but the book will be out there for all to read. It goes on sale on June 28th. The excitement, as I say, has been building for quite some time in-house. And as you can see, before we even started this program, so many folks have read it, and so many more now are on the bandwagon. So Nikki, thank you so much, and congratulations on this book, The Measure. It is just an absolute wonderful read.
Thank you. It's been a wild ride. And sort of fittingly, during this kind of build up to publication, I've been helping my parents kind of clean out their house, my childhood home, and I found a whole stack of these short stories in the attic that I wrote when I was like 12 years old. And so I just thought, if I could tell this 12-year-old that like in 15 years this is where I would be, I mean, I don't think she would believe you. Like it's crazy.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. Well, you were getting your, reading books way back when, I'm sure, because you rarely meet a writer who isn't an avid reader, and as you say, on that adventure and empathy. So, yeah, that's pretty wonderful.
There is one
Uh,
last question
Okay.
by Anna Raquel. Have you ever read The Personal Librarian?
No, I haven't. I've heard of it though. So perhaps I will just bring that straight up to the top of the list.
There you go. The ever-growing pile just got higher.
I think I actually own a copy of that though. I think a family member of mine read it. So it's very, I can go grab it today.
Isn't that crazy? Oh God. We've all got so many books, so little time. If you've seen that poster or tote bag once, you've seen it a million times. So if you want to hang here for a second, Nikki, we wanted to just, Lainey, you want to talk about some upcoming stuff before we say goodbye to everyone?
Yes. Thank you, Nikki. This is fabulous. I don't want it to end. Like I didn't want the book to end, but as it must. So we have a very exciting week for you. And Essie put together this really great video that you probably saw on Facebook or social that told you it's Thursday is St. Patrick's Day, and we're really leaning into the theme. You're lucking out here because we're doing 3 author events. So we have this today. Tomorrow we have a pre-recorded video with Holding Her Breath author
Emir
Ryan, thank you. And we recorded that previously so that you had something while we were away at PLA next week, but we can't wait and we're releasing it tomorrow. And then you'll have it to kind of continue watching while we're gone at PLA, because there's not going to be a Galley Club or door-to-door next week. And then we have the podcast. We did Library Reads yet today, our announcement. So go listen to authors react to making the list. But we also have an extra one. I know we're just really feeling generous, but we have an extra podcast with Sarah McCoy coming tomorrow, who wrote Mystique Island. And that's going to be tomorrow. And then Thursday with Emir Ryan, who has the video pre-recorded. That's tomorrow. Thursday, we have a very shamrock-filled episode for you where we're going to just celebrate St. Patrick's Day, talk about some books, talk about PLA. We're going to let you know what's happening. Thank you, Essie. And we have a surprise author coming. And, I don't have any hints for you other than something on our social in the next couple of days is going to tell you who's coming. So I hope you tune in, and we're going to keep it a secret from you. But we'll tell you all about PLA that day as well. And we have a nice soda bread recipe that Virginia.
Esty, share the soda bread recipe. This'll blow your hair back. So you should make it now. Oh, look at your shamrocks. Okay, it's in the chat, right? Right, Essie? It's in the chat.
I'll share it in the chat.
And folks can make it, and then you can slather on some butter and join us for shenanigans on Thursday. How's that? So that's what we have. We had a lot going on this week. But Nikki, kicking it off with you was something that we have been looking forward to for quite some time. And we're so happy to celebrate this book with you all month long with librarians, and talking to your editor and Julia Whalen, who did the audiobook. And folks, if you haven't read it, honestly, it is just such you go on a journey. And so I hope that you've read it by now. I'm sure that so many of you have, because you've all chimed in about certain aspects of the book and characters in the book. And it's hugely unique and just so compelling. And we are lucky to have this book under our roof. And thank you so much for writing it.
Thank you. I'm lucky that that I have this amazing team. I truly pinch myself every morning when I wake up. I'm so grateful.
Well, I think we've covered it all, and this was great fun, a great conversation. So reading is an adventure in empathy. I'm making a bumper sticker. Nikki Erlick.
Throwing that on a poster or something.
Love that. All right, everyone. We'll see you on when are we going to see them, Lainey? Wednesday, Thursday?
Somebody had a question about where all this is going to be. Crowdcast is now another option for people who don't have Facebook. Our Galley Club will be available as well as Facebook and YouTube. So thrice the ways to watch. But the pre-recorded video and the podcast will all be posted on our Facebook page. So just keep going and you'll find updates there. The live video with the author, the surprise author, will be Thursday, 2 p.m. Facebook Live. So Facebook will tell you everything you need to know.
There you go. But
And everyone's
Crowdcast
coming
will
with their
be,
soda bread.
we're folding Crowdcast in so that we can sort of open the window for all to come in. So make that soda bread and your eyes will roll in your head. That's all I can tell you. All right. Bye, Nikki. Bye, Lainey. Goodbye.